It was around 2 p.m. on March 8, 2011. I was on a low ebb. It was International Women's Day, and I didn't have a story, like I normally did. It is not that it is a compulsion to write about women on International Women's Day, but I had kept the tradition and I didn't want to let it go. But here was a year when I didn't have a story on the earlier day nor on the same day. And it is not that you get many occasions to write on women. So the day passed, and I was almost about to give up when I got a call. The person who called me was the RMO, the resident medical officer of the Coimbatore Medical College Hospital here, the GH. He told me there was a program being organized by a trust which is run by women at 4 p.m. to honor the women employees of the hospital, and he asked me whether I would like to attend. Well, there are many programs which happen on Women's Day to recognize women, and it's next to impossible to attend all. And also the call made me more disappointed because it only gave me an opportunity not for a larger story or a bigger story, but another item which would be a routine report. But I didn't want to disappoint him. I told him I will speak to the person and get the details about who's being felicitated and give a small report, but I wouldn't be able to attend. I got the number. The person I spoke to was Josephine Rosamma, trustee of Jeevatma Trust. There are myriad trusts which organize these programs. They work for education, uplift of women. So I thought this was one of those trusts, and I spoke to her. She told me that the trust, which consists of 4 women, was felicitating the women employees of the hospital, for working day and night and for work which they don't get recognized for. We spoke for around 10 minutes, and I was about to end the call when, out of sheer curiosity, I asked her what her trust did. "We bury unclaimed bodies," she said. Well, I was awestruck. I thought I had heard it wrong. So I repeated her answer like a question. "You bury unclaimed bodies?" She said yes again. So I was still not convinced. The skeptic in me made her ask, "So you employ men to do it?" She said, "No, we do it ourselves, but with the help of one male helper, because it is convention that certain rites for the dead should not be done by women." I was surprised because I've heard of the Thoda Trust. I think many of you would have heard of the Thoda Trust, where there is the trust which consists of men, which buries unclaimed bodies from the GH. But Jeevatma Trust, the name was new, and no one knew about the work, and no one had also written about the work. As I kept talking to Josephine, I knew why, because they never spoke about the work. They were a year old, they never spoke about the work. And even that moment, she was quite reluctant to speak to me about her work. But I was not one to give up easily. I pressed her into talking to me, even though she kept dodging with excuses. Finally, she relented. It all began when Josephine went for driving classes to the driving school of one Tendril Ishwari. The 2 women became fast friends, and they discovered that they had a common, they had an urge to do something different for society. They deliberated about various options, and finally they decided upon this. They included 2 other teacher friends of Josephine, and with the support and consent of the family and husbands was born Jeevatma Trust in March 2010. They hired an ambulance with a driver, but Josephine and Ishwari also learned to drive the ambulance in the absence of a driver. They approached the CMCH, they introduced themselves as the trust which should do voluntary service, that they would bury the unclaimed bodies lying in the morgue, or victims who died of accidents and who could not be identified, or those who lay dead, orphaned, on the roads and pavements. Thus began their work. They did all the paperwork related to police, hospital, collected the body from the morgue, cleaned it, wrapped it in the traditional white cloth, carried it in the ambulance, took it to the corporation burial ground, and of course gave it a decent burial. They did not cremate the bodies just because the crematoriums were very expensive. When I heard Josephine, the first thought that came to me was, here is a group of women who were heroes in their own right, but totally oblivious of that, they were taking up a program to honor other women. Even when I told her that I'm going to send my photographer to take a picture, she was quite reluctant, but finally she yielded. As the conversation was coming to an end, I couldn't but help ask Josephine, don't you realize that what you're doing is something unique? With a light laugh, she answered, we don't know about that. All that we know is we wanted to do something different for society, and what best than this? The most important thing, the valuable thing in life is human life. When we live, we do not respect the dignity in life. At least when a person dies, it is the duty of another human being to ensure that the deceased gets a decent send-off. That was the end of the conversation. I'm sure you would understand if I tell you that it took me a long while to come back to my normal self after the call ended. I knew I had something unique in my hands, but somehow I was not happy because I felt it was too sketchy. I wanted to speak to all the 4 women. I wanted to speak to their families, the husbands. But the journalist in me knew that the story had to go the same day, because if those women had to be recognized, it had to be in commemoration with Women's Day. And it was already March 8th, and it had to be published on the same day. So the journalist in me won, and I got into action. I informed the Chief of Bureau that I had the story. I sent my photographer to CMCH, but only after briefing him that he'll have to cajole and coax them into, then got down to the most difficult job of the day, giving life to Jeevatma in black and white. I didn't know how I was going to do it, because I had to do full justice to the work of the women. Yet I did it, and my small effort paid off. The report appeared in the next day's paper, titled Ensuring a Dignified Burial for the Destitute. The response was amazing. The women were flooded with congratulatory calls. Not only that, they got offers of cash, vehicle, manpower, and even land for burial. But the women did not accept any donations. Almost a year later, September 2012, the work of these women got recognized. And these are the women, the 3 of them. This is Ishwari. The second is Josephine, and the third is Gracie Jenny. But unfortunately, they were not the recipients of the recognition. They did not get any award. The honor came to me. And I received it on their behalf, even though I had the least contribution in it. I deemed it a privilege to have got the opportunity to show Jeevatma to the society. It is such people and their work that keeps the journalist alive in me. There is a Josephine within each one of us. With a little effort, I believe we will be able to discover her. Thank you.